Dumelang Absheni, and a very good morning to you, Africa. I go by the name of Naledi Kundene.
And I am Ashwin Mberi, and it is fantastic to have you here on Africa. Good morning, as we continue to bring you the news and current affairs happening in the SADC region and beyond. Now, today is World Physiotherapy Day. The focus of this year's Physiotherapy Day is the role physiotherapists play in the treatment, management, and rehabilitation of patients who have severely suffered as a result of COVID. Later in the program, we'll be talking to an expert, Gabriel Mulenga, about the physiotherapist's role in these trying times. So here's a video on World Physiotherapy Day.
And in your news this hour, coming to you from Guinea, Guinea coup leader promises national government as politicians arrested. The leaders of a military coup in Guinea promised on Monday to set up a transitional government of national unity after ousting President Alpha Condé and dissolving his cabinet. Sunday's coup, in which Condé and other top politicians were detained or barred from traveling, is the third since April in West and Central Africa, raising concerns about slide back to military rule in a region that had made strides towards multi-party democracy since the 1990s. The coup was welcomed by many, but spooked by the mining sector. Guinea holds the world's largest bauxite reserves and ore used to produce aluminium. Prices of the metal shot to a 10-year high on Monday, though there were no sign of supply disruptions.
Sticking with Guinea, West Africa bloc to hold extraordinary summit on Guinea. The Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, will hold an extraordinary summit on Guinea on Thursday, according to a staff memo shared with Reuters. Special Forces soldiers ousted long-serving President Alpha Condé and dissolved his cabinet on Sunday, prompting ECOWAS to demand a return to constitutional order and threaten to impose sanctions. An ECOWAS spokeswoman did not immediately reply to a request for comment late on Monday.
And in your third story, coming to you from Ethiopia, UN footage from northern Ethiopia shows humanitarian crisis. Footage of war-hit northern Ethiopia published by the UN World Food Programme on Monday reflected the severe humanitarian crisis there, after the United Nations warned that a de facto blockade on aid is bringing millions to the brink of famine. War broke out 10 months ago between Ethiopia's federal troops and forces loyal to the Tigray People's Liberation Front, which controls the Tigray region. The supplies delivered that day were among the last remaining stocks in the Tigray region, where no food or other humanitarian aid entered between the 20th of August and the 5th of September. The United Nations estimates 100 trucks of aid needs to be brought and being entering into Tigray each day to meet the needs of the population.
Now, in our next story, South African President welcomes Zuma's medical parole. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa has welcomed the decision to release former President Jacob Zuma on medical parole. President Ramaphosa wished Zuma a quick recovery during his concluding remarks at a National Executive Committee meeting of the governing African National Congress. On Sunday, the Department of Correctional Services announced that the former president would serve the remainder of his 15-month prison sentence at home. The nature of his illness was not specified, but the statement said he would complete the rest of his sentence in the community under special conditions. His foundation described the development as an act of humility. Zuma handed himself into police in July after being sentenced for failing to attend an inquiry into corruption during his presidency.
Well, we hope he gets well soon. Coming to you from DRC, dozens killed in northeast DR Congo by suspected ADF rebels. At least 30 people were killed in a weekend attack in the restive northeast of Democratic Republic of Congo, according to the local and UN sources. The Allied Democratic Forces rebel group is suspected of carrying out the attack in the Ituri area on Saturday, they said on Monday. A UN source confirmed to AFP that at least 30 people had been killed in the attack. Congolese authorities' crackdown against ADF has included a state of siege that started in early May, in which top officials in North Kivu and neighboring Ituri province have been replaced by members of the security forces who have been granted far-reaching powers.
In our next story, phone blackout imposed on Nigerian state amid crackdown on kidnappers. Mobile telephone networks were shut down in the northwestern Nigerian state of Zamfara, residents said on Monday, after authorities ordered a telecoms blackout to help armed forces tackle armed gangs of kidnappers terrorizing the area. The blackout was to enable relevant security agencies to carry out required activities towards addressing the security challenge in the state, according to a letter from the Nigerian Communications Commission (NCC) to network provider Globalcom. Zamfara has been one of the worst hit states in a wave of mass abductions of pupils from schools across northwestern Nigeria by armed gangs of ransom seekers operating from remote camps. One of the Zamfara residents contacted by Reuters, lecturer Abubakar Abduhali Al-Hassan, said he had heard that a military crackdown had been going on since the mobile networks had stopped working. Military spokespeople in the capital, Abuja, were not responding to requests for comment.
And all over Africa, COVID-19 cases surging across Africa, death toll nears 200,000 across the continent. As of September the 6th, confirmed cases of COVID-19 from 55 African countries reached over 7,896,315, while over 69 million vaccinations have been administered across the continent. Reported deaths reach over 199,265, and over 7 million people have recovered. The numbers are compiled by the Center for Systems Science and Engineering at Johns Hopkins University using statistics from the World Health Organization and other international institutions, as well as the national and regional public health departments.
In our next story, G7 nations urge return to constitutional order in Tunisia. The ambassadors of the G7 group of advanced economies urged Tunisia's president on Monday to appoint a new head of government as a matter of urgency and return to a constitutional order in which an elected parliament plays a significant role. The statement put out by the British Embassy on social media is the most significant public expression of unease by major democracies since President Kais Saied seized governing powers in July in moves his opponents called a coup. Saied, who was elected in 2019, said on July 25 he was freezing parliament, lifting the immunity of its members, dismissing the prime minister, and that he would assume executive authority alongside a new premier. The G7 statement said appointing a prime minister would create space for an inclusive dialogue about proposed constitutional and electoral reforms, and added that democratic values would remain central to their relations with Tunisia.
And coming to you from DRC, DRC's government says 12 people died after Angola mine tailings leak. 12 people died and 4,400 people fell sick in Southern Democratic Republic of Congo following a tailings leak from the Katoka diamond mine in Angola in July, the DRC's environment minister has said. After a visit to Kasai province, where the Chikapa River turned red and many fish died, Eve Baizaba also said on Thursday that the DRC would ask for reparations for the damage caused, but not yet say how much it would request. The DRC will seek reparations in line with the polluter pays, Principal Baizaba said. The company previously said it immediately took measures to minimize the flow of sediment into the rivers and that it donated food baskets to the affected communities to mitigate the impact of the spill.
South Sudan to circumcise 1.5 million men in HIV campaign. A project to circumcise 1.5 million South Sudanese men aged from 15 to 49 has been launched in the country in order to reduce the prevalence of HIV. Research has shown that circumcised men are at a much lower risk of contracting HIV than uncircumcised men when having heterosexual sex with someone who is HIV positive. The NGO Human Appeal Associates, in partnership with the Health Ministry, will be looking for volunteers over the next 5 years. The demand for circumcision in the capital, Juba, alone is very, very high. Robert Matthew Uku from Human Appeal Associates told the BBC. Nearly 100 males, including 25 adults, were circumcised over the weekend. About 2.3% of 15 to 49-year-olds in South Sudan are thought to be HIV positive, UNAIDS says.
That is a great initiative. And coming to you from Tanzania, Art Expo preserves Tanzania's indigenous legends. The Fahari Yetu project, funded by the German Gerda Henkel Foundation, launches an exhibition of African history and culture featuring Asian stories found in the Iringa region. It is called Endangered Stories of Enchanted Places. The launch of the exhibition is a continuation of the preservation of the endangered African memories for future generations. Most of the objects displayed in the cultural center have been donated by people living in the Iringa region. They originated from different villages, ethnic groups, and communities. Visitors can find out more about the traditional ways of harvesting, storing, preparing, and eating food in Iringa. The objects tell also stories about music, dance, and ritual trade. The exhibition enables visitors to trace the growth of Iringa town from its colonial past to its struggle for independence to today's global influences. The contemporary art exhibit about endangered stories and enchanted places brings into focus the traditional beliefs and myths of the region's people and their adaptation to social change.
Artists interact intimately with the spaces society takes for granted. Now, in the last of our top stories, IUCN Red List. Bad news for sharks, Komodo dragons, but tuna improving. Nearly 2 in 5 sharks are threatened with extinction due to overfishing. The International Union for Conservation of Nature has warned in an update of the Wildlife Red List that also listed Indonesia's Komodo dragons, the world's largest living lizards, as endangered. But the latest update of the Red List for threatened species also highlights the potential for restoration, with 4 commercially fished tuna species pulling back from a slide towards extinction after a decade of efforts to curb overexploitation. Calling it great news, Craig Hilton-Taylor, head of the IUCN Red List unit, told Al Jazeera the remarkable recovery was thanks to continuing efforts to enforce fishing quotas over the past 2 decades. It shows that conservation does work and can benefit species, he said from the French city of Marseille, which is hosting the IUCN Congress. A key message from the event is that disappearing species and the destruction of ecosystems are no less existential threats than global warming. We truly need to coexist with this earth and make sure that we leave something beautiful for our children. This is Africa Good Morning. We have more news for you after the break. business as usual with a sole focus on profitability has become somewhat obsolete. Joining us to talk about environmental, social and governance or ESG aspects is Johan Nel, the tax and operations partner of PwC Namibia. Have a look.
Business as usual, with the sole focus on profitability, has become somewhat obsolete. Joining us to talk about environmental, social, and governance, or SEG aspects, is Johan Nel, the tax and operations partner of PwC Namibia. Hello, Johan, and welcome to the program.
Thank you, Germany. Good to be here.
My first question: environmental, social, and governance, or SEG aspects, are increasingly gaining momentum in the corporate world. What does this concept encompass?
So, Germany, these days financial profits are no longer the only metric that defines the success of a business. There's increased scrutiny on businesses about what is your impact on society, what are you doing for the environment, and how's your governance structure. So it's really become a strategic driver for CEOs and boards to defend the overall sustainability of their companies that they lead.
And to which extent are businesses being scrutinized as far as ESGs are concerned?
So the power of social media, as you're aware, is getting a lot bigger and bigger. Everybody these days has an opinion. Previously, everybody couldn't express their opinions, but these days, you have a voice, you've got followers, and all of a sudden something is made a big hoo-ha. So we've seen this in Namibia even. We've seen some corporates being criticized for some actions that they've taken, leading to lots of negative exposure. So businesses are being scrutinized for what they do for society, the impact they have, and what they're doing to the environment. And then from an investment perspective, more and more investment managers and private equity houses are looking at ESG as a criteria when evaluating whether to invest in that business. In the US, we've got a firm called BlackRock Investments, and they are one of the firms that's strongly driving this, that's putting a strong emphasis on the sustainability component when looking at investment. So I think that in the next couple of years, and maybe sooner, it will become more and more important as the pressure builds on businesses to evaluate the true impact they have on society and the environment at large.
Johan, just in layman's terms, when one talks about ESGs, what exactly does that involve? Climate change, your footprint, your carbon footprint? What other practical examples are there?
Yes, so on the environmental side, obviously there's the environmental impact. And there was the Paris Agreement that a lot of the countries subscribe to, which talks about the net zero impact. So in terms of carbon emissions, how do you become net zero? So the UK, for instance, have committed by 2050 to become net zero from a carbon emissions perspective. So yeah, it is about how much carbon you emit, how much you put back. Practically put in the Namibian society, are you using solar energy? How much recycling are you doing? What is the impact that you have on society? When we look at things like mining and oil and gas, we've got the debate now about the new oil field that has the potential in the Okavango region. So all of these things play a part. And so ESG, yes, it's about your environmental impact and about your social impact, fair labor practices, for instance, and then, of course, good governance, good corporate governance, yes.
For companies who want to implement ESGs, how will it impact on their business? Is there a cost aspect to it? What is the practical implication?
So definitely there will be more resources that will be needed, because the moment that you try to capture what's going on in terms of your ESG impact, you will need somebody to monitor this. So there will be compliance and reporting. So it's not legislated in Namibia yet. Some countries have put in legislation that requires ESG reporting. That's not the case in Namibia. But making money will not be enough anymore. Being sustainable will be very important, and therefore companies will have to revise their strategies to factor into these strategies the effect of ESG and sustainability, And all of this will lead to definitely more resources being used. So that's going to be the direct impact on the business. Yeah. Changing the way that you think about the future of your business, not just about the money aspect, but how do you become sustainable in the long term?
Johan, you said that the whole concept of ESGs isn't yet law in Namibia. But to which extent do businesses in Namibia and the rest of Southern Africa practice ESGs at the moment?
So I think to a certain extent, Namibia is starting to implement this on a small scale. So certain sectors are more inclined to focus on this. In the mining industry, for instance, there's a lot of talk about what is obviously the impact on the environment and on society. Some financial services sectors have labeled this as a focus area. You've seen the issue of the green bonds on the New York Stock Exchange that the Capricorn Group has done. This is all starting points for the ESG criteria and for the ESG debate sort of to unfold. I'm also aware of some businesses that have appointed specific working committees that are now responsible for reporting on sustainability and ESG matters. As PwC, for example, we have to do quarterly reporting to our Africa network in terms of our ESG impact when it comes to the use of solar energy, the use of water, recycling, fuel, all of those things. So it's definitely something that's beginning to become more important for businesses in Namibia. And in South Africa, it's becoming quite big. As I mentioned, some investment managers are looking at this. I had a conversation with a client the other day that specifically focuses only on projects that they can definitely see that the ESG impact is good, and that they use that as their focus point when they're looking at new projects. So I think a lot of CEOs will be placing this on their strategic agenda for the future.
Johan, as a final point, what is your advice to businesses that want to implement ESGs but don't really know where to start?
So I think they have to keep it simple. This is not, it's no use that you're already struggling in an economy, we're struggling with foreign investment, we're struggling with so many things in this country, to now try and spend lots of money on revising strategies just to implement ESG is going to be problematic, and I think it may be frowned upon a bit by certain people. So my advice would be start small, just see what do you already do. Because a lot of people do recycling. Lots of people have started to put up solar in terms of their business. These are all small steps. You just need to start monitoring this. You need to say, what am I doing in terms of saving energy? Have I installed solar power? Have I increased or decreased the amount of water that I use? These are all things that play a role. And then you look at existing initiatives that you are already working on to support the society. These can be donations that you make, your community outreach programs. All of these things are examples of how you influence society. So lots of the ESG metrics may already be implemented, but no one is actually documenting it and monitoring it. So I think to start off this journey, just take a step forward and just start monitoring the small things instead of trying to have a full-blown assessment. Just take the first step forward.
Johan, thank you very much for your time and your insights. We wish you the best of luck with your ESG efforts at PwC Namibia.
Thank you.
If you're feeling, I'm feeling, and you know I won't stop. All we gotta do is take our love to the top. If I got it and you want it, and you'll never let it drop. All we gotta do is take our love to the top. I will ride for you, maybe even die for you. When I'm loving you, but my heart don't stop.
Police in Lusaka have arrested 2 people for the offense of extorting money from markets and bus stations. Speaking to us about this story and many more Other stories in Zambia is Mike Asichula. Good morning to you.
Africa, good morning. How are you doing too?
We're doing very well. Please
Yes,
head into your first story for us, sir.
yes. What has been happening is that with President Hakainde Hichilema coming into office, he has pledged a zero tolerance to political cadres taking over or interfering in the operations of markets and bus stations. What was the trend is that under the Patriotic Front administration, political cadres, unemployed, mostly unemployed youths were taking control. So that's one of the receipts that these people are alleged to have made. So what happens is that when a bus station goes, this person has to make money, and this money does not go to the council or the local authority, it goes into the pockets of political cadres. But President Hakainde Hichilema has made it clear that he's not going to allow these criminal activities. So to show that he's in charge and he means what he says, police now have moved in to arrest people who had made these receipts, and marketeers, buses were made to pay. So this is one of very difficult challenges that President Hakainde Hichilema has, because in Zambia the unemployment levels are around 12%, and most people are in the informal sector, and some of these political cadres use these markets and bus stations to earn a living illegally.
All right. Now we're going to go into the next story, sticking with President Hakainde Hichilema. 2 weeks after his party took over government, he has named 2 new members of his cabinet. Could you please tell us about that?
Yes, from yesterday, President Hakainde Hichilema has now officially named his full cabinet ministers. The cabinet comprises of about 24 ministers, which is less by 6 from the past, which had 30 ministers. In the picture there, that is one of the cabinet ministers, Sylvia Masebo. She's heading the Ministry of Health, and she's one of the experienced cabinet ministers. Why do I say so? From the 7 presidents that we have had, she has served in 4 of those presidents as a cabinet minister. So she's the most experienced in this new cabinet that President Hakainde Hichilema has met.
Okay, no, that's interesting. Congratulations to her. In your third story, the Chipolopolo boys yesterday suffered a 2-0 home defeat at the hands of North Africa's Tunisia in the FIFA 2022 Qatar World Cup qualifier match. In a few seconds, do tell us about that.
That was a very sad step for the Chipolopolo boys, who are aiming to go to the World Cup for the first time. Coming from a 2-1 victory in Mauritania, everybody expected that the team was going to win at Levi Mwanawasa Stadium in Dola on the Copper Belt, but that was never the case. In the 80th minute, Zambia conceded. Then late in the dying minutes, they also conceded another goal. So now the situation is a little bit difficult, meaning the team has to win away in Mauritania and back in Mauritania. They try and get something in Tunisia. Very difficult position indeed.
We certainly wish them all the best in their endeavor. Thank you very much, Mike, for bringing us the news from Zambia.
Thank you very much, Africa. Good morning.
As the Chipolopolo look forward to what could possibly be brighter days, we are hoping to have a bright day today as we check out our weather forecast up next. Welcome back to Africa. Good morning. It's time for us to cross over to South Africa to get our news from Ari Hogad. Good morning, Ari. How are you?
Lovely morning in Cape Town.
All right. Now, I know we're not doing our sports update right now, but we're kind of going to go like touch rugby. You don't keep the ball in for too long as each story goes. Let's start off with the first one. The Electoral Commission of South Africa has decided to reopen candidate and voter registration to allow the ANC to complete their nomination after they missed their earlier deadline. Favoritism? Tell us about it.
Yes, it's a bit controversial. Some of the parties not happy about that, but I think it's good for the process in South Africa. There was definitely mistakes made by the ANC in not getting those registrations in, but I think there would have been chaos if those nominations didn't go through. So what it stands at the 18th and the 19th of September. That's the deadline that the parties do have now. The ANC missed 93 municipalities, so they can submit them now. The DA and the IFP is not happy. They're consulting their lawyers and they still want this to be overturned. It goes back to 2011 and 2016 when the IFP and the NFP had similar challenges than the ANC and was denied. So there was some accusations that it was a bit of favoritism or political bias to benefit the ANC. But I think the reality is we need all parties to nominate their people and municipalities to work effectively.
Okay, Ari, and a little birdie tells me that there is still uncertainty if the Independent Medical Parole Advisory Board actually approved the medical parole of former President Jacob Zuma. Tell us the tea.
Yes, there's the medical board that needs to approve that. And then you've got the head of the correctional services, which is Mr. Arthur Fraser. But the DA asked for just an investigation if the Independent Medical Parole Advisory Board did actually approve the process. The definition is quite tough to get those medical parole. You need to be medically parolees when you're terminally ill or physically incapacitated or have severe limited abilities of self-care and mobility. So that is a tough definition to tick off. So by that definition, the former president really do have health challenges. Tomorrow, his case in the court needs to go on, and its corruption trial needs to resume tomorrow. And we will see what happens. Probably his lawyers will argue that he's not fit to stand trial tomorrow. The military doctors that's helping the former president already said that he needs at least 6 months of treatment. So we will see how that pans out tomorrow in court.
All right. Now, despite massive defense budget cuts announced earlier this year, the National Defense Force is pushing through with sending soldiers and officers for training in Cuba. Could you tell us about that?
Yeah, there's been a long-standing frustration, I think, with all the money that's going to Cuba, not only for the army, but there was health and water and etc. But just the background is that the Department of Defense made massive budget cuts, and it was hundreds of millions of rand that was cut. But still, they went through. It's about 200 soldiers that went off to Cuba now for training. It's soldiers and officers. The challenge is that there's a strong argument that some of the training opportunities, or most of the training opportunities, are in abundance locally. So the chartered flight is about 2.5 million on SAA just to get them there in Cuba. So in the past decade, the argument in Parliament was that there was 1 billion rand spent on Cuban contracts. That is for upkeep of the equipment of the South African Army. So lots of money spent in the partnership with Cuba. I think the argument was just because there was massive cuts, is it really necessary to send these soldiers to Cuba for training that can be done locally?
Yeah, pretty interesting. And in South Africa, some universities are trying to make it mandatory for students and teachers to get vaccinated. Do tell us about that. But before you do, please be reminded that you need to sanitize, wear your mask, social distance, and stay at home. Ali, tell us about it.
Absolutely, we agree, and that's the same. I've got a daughter at the University of Stellenbosch, so they're adhering to that. But the challenge is obviously they've got lots of students at one at the universities. So there's lots of people together in close spaces. Lots of the training has been online, but there's been some classes as well. Just quickly, University of Stellenbosch and University of Johannesburg are the two universities that said that they could go through a process where it's mandatory to have the vaccine. Already the deans, the committee of deans, they implicated, or they said that it is important for the medical students at least to be vaccinated, so because they're healthcare workers. So there is a bit of controversy there. Some of the other universities already indicated that they're still thinking about that. What's important here is to control it's the health priorities versus the ethical and legal rights of the individual that needs to be balanced out here. So it is a discussion, but at the moment, University of Stellenbosch and University of Johannesburg, they're considering to have all the students vaccinated.
All right, we'll see how that back and forth goes. But in our feel-good story, South African rising tennis star Lloyd Harris is through to his first ever Grand Slam quarterfinal at the US Open in New York. Could you tell us about that, Ari?
Yes, Ashwin, yeah, both of us have been battling with our teams losing, but I think South Africa do have a few feel-good stories in sport. South Africa, the Bafana soccer team did beat Ghana. That was a feel-good story as well. But Lloyd Harris, brilliant performance. We haven't had a tennis player reaching the semi-finals in many, many years. He's the young guy, 24 years old, from Cape Town. He's in the semi-finals of his first Grand Slam, the US Open. Very tough to get in there. That means he's one of the last 8 standing. He's currently number 46 in the world, so it's a great achievement for Lloyd Harris. There he is at the US Open, and he'll play today against the 4th seed. It's Alexander Zverev of Germany. A tough game for him. Zverev was in the final in 2020, but a great achievement already. You never know. If you can go through to the last 4, there's always a chance to go through. So good, make you feel good story.
Indeed. All right. Thank you so much, Ari, for bringing us the scoop about what is happening in South Africa. We love talking to you. And after the marketplace, we will be speaking to Gabriel Mulenga, so stay tuned.
Imagine if it was your daughter, your mother, your sister. Please, my brothers, let us stop the senseless killing of our women.
Abusing of alcohol is no excuse to women abuse.
As a champion man, I acknowledge the impact of women abuse and gender-based violence in Namibia.
We pledge not to stay silent for the pain of our Namibian women. We pledge to always take action against women abuse.
September is World Physiotherapy Day, and in studio today we have Gabriel Mulenga, Executive Committee Member of the Namibia Physiotherapy Society. Their theme for this year is Long COVID. Ashwin Mberi over here spoke to Gabriel about physiotherapy and long COVID and what all of this entails. Stay tuned.
Now, World Physiotherapy Day is recognized today, the 8th of September every year. It is an opportunity to recognize the work that physiotherapists do for their patients and the community. The day is also used by the global physiotherapy community to come together to promote the profession. The Namibian Society of Physiotherapy, the largest representative organization of physiotherapists in the country, also recognizes and celebrates this day. For 2021, the theme for World Physiotherapy Day is highlighting the role of physiotherapy in the rehabilitation of people affected by long COVID. With us in the studio to discuss these issues and more is Gabriel Mulenga from the Physiotherapy Association. Good morning, Gabriel. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you, Ashwin. Thank you.
All right. I won't lie to you, Gabriel. I have not read the word physiotherapy as much as I have just now, which just comes to show how much it's unknown. What is physiotherapy?
Indeed, you're right, Ashwin. Not a lot of people know about physiotherapy. Physiotherapists are healthcare practitioners with extensive training in developing and maintaining people's ability to move and function throughout their lives. We treat and help prevent many problems caused by pain, illness, impairments, and disease. Sometimes sport and work-related injuries we can also assist with. Aging and long periods of inactivity can also cause a variety of problems which we can help with. As you can imagine, we work with people affected by a wide variety of conditions and impairments. What's important to remember is one does not need a referral from a doctor to go see a physiotherapist in Namibia. You can just go when you feel the need to.
All right. All right, very interesting. Now, when I was doing the introduction, I mentioned long COVID. I'm sure the viewers are also wondering what that is. What is long COVID?
All right, as we all are aware, COVID-19 continues to be a serious disease that is still present within Namibia. Furthermore, we are still learning about it within the healthcare industry as the disease progresses. After more than a year and a half of COVID-19, one of the things we are learning is that recovering from COVID-19 is not necessarily the end of symptoms for everyone. We are seeing that one out of every 10 people that are affected by COVID-19, they do tend to have these symptoms that persist beyond the expected recovery period of 3 to 4 weeks, sometimes up to 12 weeks even, which is a long time. These people then need rehabilitation to recover from the COVID-19 infection so they can return to work or to school and to return to the exercise programs that they were before they got the COVID-19 infection. Now, physiotherapy plays an important role in this rehabilitation of these long COVID patients, Ashwin.
All right, that's interesting because then when you're speaking, I was wondering, what are the symptoms of long COVID? We know the basic symptoms of COVID, but what are the symptoms that physiotherapy then steps in to help with?
Indeed. You're right, Ashwin. Most people do know the symptoms of COVID-19. What we mean by long COVID, by definition, it just means the same symptoms that you've had are persisting longer than we expect them to. However, what we are seeing with most people, when they do develop long COVID, the most common symptoms they present with are shortness of breath with that chest tightness, high levels of fatigue or just tiredness in general. And then this is a big one, problems with memory and concentration, especially when you return to work or to school.
You know, a lot of people don't actually pay attention to that last one in particular. So what can one do about long COVID?
All right. Some of the important things that should be done for anybody that's maybe suffering from long COVID is you should return to your everyday activities, but slowly and not too quickly. It's important to maintain a general exercise program just to increase your strength and endurance, but again, in a gradual, controlled manner. Breathing exercises are going to be important just to keep the lungs strong and to keep the endurance as well. Any exercises that one does should be done again in a careful manner. What we see is if you overdo it, you can worsen your condition actually. Physiotherapists are then able to safely guide you through all the above via a rehabilitation program that we make customized for you and your specific needs actually. One thing that should be important to note is anytime any of your symptoms start to worsen, whether you are having rehabilitation or not, you must contact your healthcare practitioner or go to the hospital as soon as possible.
All right. Now, I'm interested in knowing then what would then be the take-home message. We know people don't know much about physiotherapy, and just right, you've highlighted how essential it is for us, especially when we're recovering from long COVID. What's the take-home message? What should our viewers remember?
Fantastic. Thank you, Ashwin. Unfortunately, COVID-19 is still around. And as we've all noted, there are new variants coming up, and this means we must not relax our guard against this virus. It does remain vital to adhere to the Ministry of Health's regulations and guidelines. And furthermore, vaccination is of utmost importance to consider for anyone that's able to. For those that have been affected by the virus in the past, please do remember that symptoms may persist, even after the virus is long gone from the body. This is why it remains important to have your physiotherapist check you and see what's going on. We can then help you and guide you through a safe rehabilitation program to try to get you back to where you were before. You can find a physiotherapist by checking our website. This is www.namibiaphysio.com. Namibia Physio is one word. Alternatively, we are also running a social media campaign. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Namibia Physio.
All right. Thank you very much for sharing that important information for us, Gabriel. Physiotherapy Day, that is today. Google it. We have a website that you can check out. And you said you don't need a prescription from your doctor.
Not at all, actually.
You just need to be concerned about your health. We were talking to Gabriel Mulenga from the Physiotherapy Association in Namibia. We truly appreciate you being here, Gabriel.
Thank you, Ashwin.
All right, this is Africa Good Morning. It's not just about recovering. It's about making sure you stay healthy for the long haul. Stick around. Welcome back to Africa Good Morning. It's time for us to dive straight into your economic news stories for the day. And we start off in South Africa as South Africa's Shoprite chalks up 20% annual profit rise. South Africa's largest grocery retailer, Shoprite Holdings, reported a 20.3% rise in annual earnings and said it hopes to conclude the sale of assets in Madagascar and Uganda during the 2022 financial year. Fewer liquor store closures as COVID-19 restrictions on alcohol sales were lifted also contributed to the overall sales performance, with continued bumper furniture sales driven by a home improvement trend. Supermarkets in operations elsewhere in Africa continue to operate in regions challenged by microeconomics and constraints on consumer affordability, which have been exacerbated by the impact of COVID-19 restrictions and regulations. Notwithstanding these factors, constant currency sales from continuing operations increased by 6.8%.
And from Guinea, reports of Guinea unrest sent aluminium prices to a 10-year high. Aluminium climbed to the highest in more than a decade as a political unrest in Guinea fueled concerns over supply of the raw material needed to make metal. The rattled global aluminium market, prices in London notched a fresh 10-year high, and futures in China climbed to the highest since 2006. As a political instability rises, the possibility of disruptions to backside shipments from a key global supplier. The energy-intensive aluminium industry has come under increased scrutiny as part of Beijing's pollution crackdown. The country has become increasingly reliant on imports, a rare development that's drained global supplies of usually abundant metal.
In our third economic news story, Eswatini's economy risks crashing. The Kingdom of Eswatini is carving a path to a private-led economy, an economy at risk of crashing if it does not embrace crucial economic reforms. For a while now, the kingdom has been struggling to attract investments, but the COVID-19 pandemic seems to have presented the opportunity it needs to restructure the local economy. That's why late last year, Eswatini unveiled an economy recovery plan to get it out of the woods. The country's Minister of Commerce, Industry and Trade, Senator Makoba Kumalo, tells Business Africa that we've created a list of projects that are basically implementation ready, and that with government enablement and with a clear view of the value that they're going to bring in terms of creating revenues for corporate taxes, revenues in payroll taxes, revenues in consumer taxes.
And from South Africa, future of Mercedes-Benz East London plant secured by investments. The longer-term future of Mercedes-Benz production plant in East London has been secured by investments to ensure its flexibility to produce vehicles with different powertrains. The move was driven by the global automotive industry transition to electromobility. The South African plant could produce 100% hybrids. Obviously, we have to prepare the drivetrain for that, but this secures the future, said Berza. What is the key and most important topic right now is that our operations in South Africa are flexible in terms of powertrain. This is extremely important, especially our South African plant is an export plant, he said.
Well, that brings us to the end of our economic news stories. After the short break, we'll be back with your sports news. Welcome back to Africa. Good morning. As promised, we're diving straight into your sports news updates, and we're starting off with football. 2022 World Cup. Ivory Coast hold on to beat Cameroon as South Africa edges Ghana. Ivory Coast moved ahead of Cameroon in Group D of World Cup qualifying thanks to a 2-1 win over the indomitable Lions in Abidjan, on Monday. And South Africa scored in the 83rd minute to secure a 1-0 win over visiting Ghana to move to the top of Group G. Ghana, who had to make several changes to the team that beat Ethiopia on Friday because of COVID-related issues, began well in Tuesday's match in Johannesburg, enjoying much of the possession. Only the winners of Africa's 10 qualifying groups qualify for the playoffs next March, when the continent's 5 finalists for next year's World Cup will be known.
And in your international sport news, India takes series lead after dramatic England collapse. Jasprit Bumrah starred as India crushed England by 157 runs to win the 4th test at the Oval on Monday and take a 2-1 lead in the 5-match series. The Tourists took all 10 wickets. They needed inside a day's play, bouncing back in style following their innings defeat in the 3rd test at the Headingley, and cannot now lose a series. England have little time to regroup before the 5th test at Old Trafford starts on Friday, and Root could not hide his disappointment. India's victory came 50 years on from their first test and series win in England at the Oval in 1971.
Now in the world of tennis, Djokovic tested but wins US Open to advance slam quest. Novak Djokovic struggled but advanced within 3 matches of completing the first men's singles calendar year Grand Slam in 52 years on Monday by outlasting American Jenson Brooksby at the US Open. World number 1 Djokovic rallied past 99th ranked Brooksby to book a quarterfinal encounter with Italian 6th seed Matteo Berrettini in a rematch of July's Wimbledon final. The 34-year-old Serbian star would become the first man since Rod Laver in 1969 to sweep all 4 major titles in the same year by capturing his 4th career US Open crown. Djokovic also seeks a men's singles record 21st Slam trophy, which would boost him 1 ahead of Big 3 rivals Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal, both absent with injuries.
All right, and in your 4th story, top tennis star Sloane Stephens shares appalling social media posts. American tennis player Sloane Stephens has become the latest prominent athlete to share the personal burden of what she said were relentless and exhausting attacks she receives on social media. "I am human," Stephens said on Instagram a day after being inundated by more than 2,000 messages of abuse, anger following a 3rd-round loss to Germany's Angelique Kerber at the US Open. Sloane Stephens, for her part, said she also received many positive messages for which she was thankful. "I am happy to have people in my corner who support me," she told the CNN.
All right, that brings us to the end of our sports news updates. After this short break, your headlines. Africa Good Morning has been broadcasting live from 7 a.m., bringing you the news and current affairs from the SADC region and beyond. Now, if you missed our top stories at the top of the hour, or if you need a recap, worry not, here are your headlines. Guinea coup leader promises national government as politicians arrested. West Africa bloc to hold extraordinary summit on Guinea. UN footage from northern Ethiopia shows humanitarian crisis. South Africa president welcomes Zuma's medical parole. South Africa's Shoprite chalks up 20% annual profit rise. And in sports, 2022 World Cup, Ivory Coast hold on to beat Cameroon as South Africa edges Ghana. Those have been our stories.
And unfortunately, we have come to the end of our show, but not the end of the week, unfortunately. But do be sure to wear your mask, sanitize, and social distance. And we'd love to hear from you, your remarks. Send us short videos, pictures of anything you'd like us to broadcast to AGM_2centsworth@nmh.com.na. And be sure to watch our live on www.oneup2.com. We love you here at Africa Good Morning. I go by the name of Naledi Kunene.
My name is Ashwin Mbedi. Until tomorrow, Swera Shakanaka.